Hey there, it's time for some common knowledge. Let's take a look at some common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you if they are any good in Pauper. We'll start off with our first card, Essence Scatter. Wow. Essence Scatter. This is some classic Magic the Gathering. When was Essence Scatter first around? M10? Yeah, it feels like this was so much before M10. Well, it's because we've gotten other counter target creature spells that just weren't called Essence Scatter, right? That's the Essence Scatter just kind of is the big one these days. What's the one I'm thinking of? Like much earlier. We go by release date, go by ascending. False summoning, I guess so, but that's portal and sorcery, quote unquote sorcery. That's not which one I'm thinking of. Which one am I thinking of? Remove Soul, of course. I'm thinking of Remove Soul. I like Remove Soul. That's the card I like. Look at that art. That's so good. I mean, this 7th edition I also really like the art for. What's a 7th edition foil? Those are always expensive. $11. Nearly $12 for this Remove Soul. But man, you got 4 of those in your deck? I guess you wouldn't necessarily play 4, but that's a hot looking card. These foils pop so much. I completely understand why they're so expensive. I do have a couple of 7th edition foils, and man, they look good. I think the blue ones probably look the best. I've got an Abyssal Spectre 7th edition that I'm pretty happy with. But anyway, let's go all the way back to why we're here, and that's Essence Scatter, which is fine. Again, I would take Remove Soul, but they're functionally the same card. Essence Scatter. It's a fine sideboard card. You're going to sideboard this in, obviously, when the opponent's playing a very creature-heavy deck. I think blue tends to want other kinds of counterspells, either unconditional counterspells or more of the non-creature ones. You'll find Negate played probably a little bit more than Essence Scatter is. Spell Pierce and those kinds of things. But there are some pretty important creatures in Pauper. You know, this is when you want to counter those Tolarian Terrors before they're on the field. You want to counter those Gurmag Anglers and some of those things. The Writhing Chrysalis. You know, there's some pretty big important. Hey, I don't want this creature on the board, or I'm probably just dead. And there's very few better options than an Essence Scatter in those cases. I'll give Essence Scatter a 5 point. No, you know what? I'll give it a better score than that. I'll give it a 6.3. It is a solid little card that you will not feel bad having in your sideboard, and you'll be very glad to have it when it comes to that. I got to get back to this part so I can do the repeat random search. Chime of Night is a good old card. Well, it's an old card. I don't know if it's necessarily a good card, but I do love the way it looks. So let's read what it says. 1 and a black for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. When this aura is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, destroy target non-black creature. Huh. It's a little interesting. So it's kind of this delayed bomb effect that you can set off. You put it on your own creature, and now your opponent is much less likely, I suppose, to kill it, knowing that they'll also lose a creature out of the deal. Maybe you have sacrifice effects that allow you to set up whenever you want to kill it. But most of the time, you're just going to want the Terror. Well, Terror is not even a good card in Pauper anymore. You're going to want the Cast Down. You're going to want to go for the Throat. You're going to want lots of those other black removal spells that just do things a whole lot faster and a whole lot better than Chime of Night. Art is awesome, though. This Urza's Destiny one. We've never gotten a reprint on this. That feels... That's odd. I feel like this would have gotten at least one reprint, but in any case, it's not amazing. And you also have to stick the enchantment before it matters, so if somebody kills the creature before the enchantment goes on it, the enchantment does nothing. And then you've wasted 2 cards. Let's give it something relatively low. I mean, it is a removal spell, but it takes a lot to get that removal to happen. And then it's also to non-black creatures, which, you know, early Magic really liked having black kill spells that would say non-black, so there was a little balance, I guess, to it. But these days, especially in Pauper, like Snuff Out works. We'll do the non-black on Snuff Out because it can be a free spell, and everything else probably shouldn't be non-black. Like we don't play with Doomblade all that much anymore. Maybe we should. But I'll give this a. It is like removal, so I kind of want to give it the 2, but I don't really think it deserves the 2. Let's go 1.8. Next up is Twiddle, another classic card. When did Twiddle first come out? When do we think? I know it has at least an old border version, so it's got to be before, obviously before 8th edition. Sorry, we see 5th edition here. Hey, it's going to be pretty early. I'm going to say this is probably all the way back to I don't know, like Tempest or something. I'm usually pretty bad at this game, especially for really old cards. Oh wow, Twiddle is all the way to the original. That's on me. That is on me for not knowing about Twiddle. Twiddle's kind of cool. I think you could potentially play Twiddle in Pauper. 1 blue for an instant. You may tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. At instant speed, that isn't bad for slowing down a creature, untapping your creature to kind of give it a pseudo vigilance, maybe freak out an opponent, catch them off guard, and be able to block something they didn't think you were going to be able to block. Reusing abilities of like tap abilities of creatures or of artifacts. And then you got to also think about it for all the lands decks, or the decks that will put a bunch of enchantments on lands, your Utopia Sprawls, your Wild Growths, even your Ravnica bounce lands that produce 2 mana. So you're netting extra mana whenever you untap it with Twiddle and then tapping it for another 2 mana or however many mana your land's able to produce. Usually we think about Arbor Elf when we think about this, and that is a body that can do that over and over and over again. But Twiddle, this is Blue's way of doing that, and it's not awful. I think it's a fine little effect, but it is a little enough effect that I think most of the time it gets left out of the deck. That sure, this would be all right. You can pretty much use it at any phase of the game, but is even 1 mana for 1 untap or tap, is that really enough to decide the game, to change the outcome? And in some cases it is, but I think in the majority of cases this just doesn't do enough, and for that it probably gets pinged a little bit. And Twiddle's a cool card. Ooh, it does have a Rebecca art as well. We like that. I'm pretty sure this version of Twiddle is in my white border cube. Twiddle, I'm going to give this a halfway decent score. It's very useful. But is it impactful? Let's go ahead and give it a 2.6. 2.6. It might even go higher than that. I'll give it a 2.8. I think Twiddle is pretty neat. If anybody plays Twiddle, I'd be like, yeah, man, Twiddle. There you go. Sunder the Gateway is 1 and a white for a sorcery. Choose 1. Either destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, and incubate 2, which means create an incubator token with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And it has, for 2 mana, transform this token. It transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. Or you can incubate 2 and then transform an incubator token you control. This isn't too bad. It's a disenchant at sorcery speed. Non-token, I guess, so that might make a bit of a difference. But I think generally you're going to go after non-token ones in Pauper most of the time. So a disenchant at sorcery speed doesn't sound too great, but that disenchant does also get you an artifact on the table. You get that incubator token, which is, for another 2 mana, you get a 2/2 creature. Those are +1/+ encounters, so maybe you can do something with +1/+ encounters. It's an artifact on the table. Maybe that matters for an affinity build that you're doing. There's lots of cool things you can do with incubator tokens. Proliferate, I guess, with the +1/+1, make it bigger. Or you could just have this be a grizzly bear. 2 mana, sorcery speed, you incubate 2, which is making that same kind of incubator token, and then you transform it for free. So you don't pay the extra 2 mana to transform it. It just transforms it itself. So you get a 2/2. That's decent enough modality. I don't think either of them are quite strong enough to really make me want to play this card. I think it probably would have been fantastic in limited. I wasn't playing March of the Machine limited. I came in like right after March of the Machine was done, or came back in when March of the Machine was done. But this is a cool little card. It's a cool little card. I will give it a 3. I think a 3 is solid. You probably won't end up playing it, but it is a solid card nonetheless. Otter Penguin from the Avatar: The Last Airbender set. So this is still a pretty brand new card. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Otter Bird. When you draw your second card each turn, this creature gets +1/+2 until the end of turn and cannot be blocked this turn. Okay, so you get a 2/1 for 2. It's not terrible for a blue creature. And then drawing your second card each turn is very easy in Pauper decks of all kinds, but certainly blue decks that have access to Opt and Brainstorm and Ponder and all those things, Cryogen Relic. Easy ways of drawing a second card on your turn. And then it becomes a 3/3 that can't be blocked. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't mind that at all. Does it really get the slot in your Pauper deck? Probably not. Generally a vanilla creature. I guess it's not quite vanilla with the can't be blocked. You're getting in with relatively consistent damage, but most of the time this is a 2/1 for 2. And that is not great. And even, it's similar to prowess creatures a little bit in that your opponent will just kind of wait for it to go back to the small version, and then they'll snipe it. If this put +1/+1 counters on itself and continued to grow over time, that would be a lot more exciting. It would probably also make it not a common. But when it just goes back to a 2/1, it's really easy to pop it off with, a Cast into the Fire or an Electrickery or an End the Festivities. There's so many little things that just, I'll ping that down. Makeshift munitions. Really easy to just ping this thing down, and then it's gone. Then you don't have to worry about it. But it could be pretty consistent damage for you turn over turn over turn. I could even see it being like a Voltron-y kind of thing, or a Bogles kind of thing, where you load this thing up and then make it unblockable and get in. There are also other unblockable creatures that you can play that don't have to have the condition at the common level, and those don't really get played either. I don't really expect this to see much play, but it is kind of cool, and probably was a cool card in Limited, which I missed out on Avatar Limited, but I bet it was fun. Heard people say it was a good time. Excuse me. Sorry. I'll give this its stat line. I'll give it a 2.1. Next up is Phyresis, originally from Mirrored and Besieged. Kind of only from Mirrored and Besieged. It has a list printing, but also the list printing is almost $6. The Mirrored and Besieged is $1.50. That's wild. I would much rather the one that didn't have the little Planeswalker symbol on it, right? And I'm also paying way less for it. Anyway, Phyresis is 1 and a black for an enchantment aura, enchanted creature. Enchanted creature has Infect. Pretty simple, pretty deadly. Now, as we mentioned, all the problems that enchantments have, that auras have. But Infect, it can be rough, man. You put this on a Gurmag Angler. What's your opponent supposed to do? Just die, I guess. You play this in a Dimir Terror deck. You put this on a Cryptic Serpent or a Tolarian Terror at some point. And all right, good luck. cut their clock down even further. Infect is just such a killer, and there are toxic decks or infect decks in Pauper. Not hugely done, but there's like a semi-meta deck that is infect. I don't know if this gets played there because I think those decks are generally Simic. If I'm not mistaken, maybe they're Dimir, or maybe a little combination of Sultai or anything can be in there. This is probably this much because of Commander, that you just throw infect on a giant creature you made. You know, you get a giant Merit Lage token or something, and then you give it infect, and you go, yeah, all right, see ya, bye. I basically just made a better Blightsteel Colossus out of a card and a token. Have a good time. I don't know if it's a very serious Pauper card, but I can see where it would be played, and I can see that it would be pretty deadly in some of those situations. God, imagine this on like a Troll of Khazad-dûn. That would be, ooh, 6/5, can't be blocked by, it has to be blocked by 3 or more creatures, and it has infect. That thing's getting through, and that thing is killing an opponent pretty easy. I'll give this a 2.4. It's better than some other enchantments in that it could really be a game changer finisher kind of thing, but it still has a lot of the drawbacks that you see with this. Next up, Oaken Siren. I love Oaken Siren. From the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, it's 4 cents, 4 pennies. You give somebody a nickel and they have to give you a penny back. And this card. That's a deal. Oaken Siren is 1 in a blue for a 1/2 artifact creature, Siren Pirate. It's got flying, it's got vigilance, and it has tap to add a blue, but you have to spend that mana only to cast an artifact spell or activate an ability of an artifact source. I think this is a good card. I really do. 1/2 flying vigilance for 2 mana in blue. That's not too bad. It can be a mana dork. If you're putting this into your deck, you're probably playing a whole lot of artifacts. This thing is an artifact, so it could even cast more copies of itself. The flying helps to attack and to block. The 1/2 helps it block fairies relatively well. The vigilance lets it attack and stay on defense. I just think this is a nice little package, and I don't have a specific deck it would go into that I can think of. But I love this card. I love this card in I guess it still is in standard, but I love this card in standard with the Zoetic Glyph, right? Yeah, Zoetic Glyph, you enchant an artifact, make it a 5/4. All right, now I've got a 5/4 flying vigilance, and it can attack, deal you 5 damage, and then I can still tap it for mana after that. Zoetic Glyph, one of my favorite cards of all time, and Oaken Siren is a card I like playing it with. You know, we also had a what is it called? It's from Phyrexia All Will Be One. That is another 1/2 artifact flyer. When it dies, you draw a card, and that one's not bad either. I think I like this one just as the mana dork capabilities, but I think both of those cards were pretty good, and I definitely used the Phyrexian one a lot more with the Zoetic Glyph. But I then really discovered Oaken Siren. This is a good card. People should play it. In Pauper, in Casual, in EDH, there's so many places to play this card, and I think it's good in most of them. I will give this a 4. I'll give it a 4. I think it's good. I think it is good. I think you should look for more opportunities to play that card. Ghostly Possession is 2 and a white for an enchantment aura. It enchants creature. Enchanted creature has flying, and you prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by enchanted creature. I don't love these. You know, blue has had some auras that have done this in the past. Giving the creature flying is... I guess it's interesting in that you can put it on your own creature, and now it blocks for days. You know, it's basically like giving it defender in that it's not going to do any damage, but it doesn't take any damage either, so it could just block everything. It's a little bit indestructible in that way. I guess you could also put this on your opponent's creature, and then you don't have to worry about it dealing damage back to you, but you also just gave your opponent an incredibly good blocker. You gave it flying, so now it blocks all your flying stuff. I don't really find a situation where I feel great playing this. I feel like I'm losing some value on it either way, and I don't like that. I think there's enough cards that all do good things. That why would I play a card that is that hamstrings me in any small way? We're to that point where there's enough card selection, or there are enough cards out there that you don't have to select the really bad ones anymore. And I think this one kind of goes into the bad ones. It's not amazing. God, I cannot. Been dealing with this for weeks. Can't get this cough out. I feel fine. Just can't get this cough out. Anyway, let's give this a 1.3. We're almost done here. Thankfully, my throat thanks me. Forbidden Friendship is one in red. I have a feeling we've done this one before. It looks familiar. We'll read it anyway, but maybe we won't count it. One in red for a sorcery. Create a 1/1 red dinosaur creature token with haste, and a 1/1 white human creature or human soldier creature token. So you get 2 1/1s. One of them has haste, and the dinosaur and the human could be useful. Actually, this could be really useful if in a of one mind. 3 mana sorcery, but it costs 2 less if you control a human creature and a non-human creature, and you draw 2 cards. So in an Is It build, you play this for 2 mana. You get a creature, you get a human and a non-human. Then you play this for 1 mana because you have a human and a non-human, and then you draw 2 cards. 3 mana draw 2, that's just a divination, right? But 3 mana draw 2 and put 2 bodies on the table. One of them has haste. Now you got a stew going. I don't know if this is some great combo that I've found here. You usually play Of One Mind in fairies decks because the ninjas are all humans for the most part, and the fairies are all fairies. And so you generally are able to get both of those creature types down, and then you use Of One Mind and you draw a bunch of cards. But in an Is It shell, I think there's something to that. That's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. Again, I feel like we've done this. We'll do a bonus card anyway, and so I guess it'll kind of even out if we have. I will give this a... I'll give it like a 3.6. 3.7, in fact. I think this is cool. It's a cool card. Next up, Viashino Warrior, card I love, and yet a card I know is bad. 3 and a red for a 4/2 Lizard Warrior. Used to be a Viashino, now it's just a Lizard. It's not amazing stats, not amazing cost, not amazing, and it's just a vanilla thing. Kind of sad. There are other Viashinos that are still have a little bit of usefulness. The Sandstalker is still kind of okay, I suppose, in some in some very niche roles, I imagine, but the Warrior's just not enough. Just not enough these days. We'll give this a 1, very sadly. Give it the 1. And we'll move on to our bonus card, which is Craven Hulk. This 4 mana for a 4/2, or 4 mana for a 4/4, with a downside, but still, just consider that when you're looking at Viashino Warrior. Craven Hulk is 3 and a red for a 4/4 giant coward. Beautiful creature types. And this creature can't block alone. There are some fun cards that will give the text "Cowards can't block warriors." I love those effects. Boldweir Enforcer? Boldweir Enforcer, that's what it's called. Boldweir Intimidator. I was so close. Boulder Intimidator. Intimidator. Goodness. Dying. Cowards Can't Block Warriors. God, I love that card. Cool card, especially in the Future Sight frame. Super cool card. Let's get out of here, not die. This is not so good. Can't Block alone is... I guess that's fun. It's a fun downside to get a 4/4 for 4, but still, it's just a 4/4 for 4. I don't think that's that big of a deal to give this a little bit of upside. Anyway, the best thing about this is it's called a Giant Coward. You can't beat that. That's great. More coward support, please. But until that time, we'll just have to deal with this. And I'll give this like a 1.3. Yeah, 1.3. It's not good. Don't play this card. But he's a giant coward. And that's pretty great. All right. See you next time. Bye.